Welcome back to Hilaal Live. Yet another coup in Africa. Just 5 weeks after Niger's President Mohamed Bazoum was taken hostage by the troops of his own presidential guard, Gabon's Ali Bongo also finds himself detained in his own residence. A sudden statement on national television in the early hours of yesterday to declare Bongo the winner of Sunday's election was followed within minutes by a second surprise broadcast as a clutch of soldiers announced the seizure of power in the former French colony. Now, why is this area plagued by continuous coups d'etats? Joining us now to discuss this is senior researcher at the Institute for Security Studies, Dr. Remadji Hoinathy. Dr. Hoinathy, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us here on Hilaal Live.
Good evening.
Dr. Hoinathy, why West Africa? I mean, this isn't the first, probably won't be the last, but why is this just an area that is never immune to coups d'etats?
Thank you. Let's start nuancing that Gabon actually is not part of West Africa. Gabon is rather in Central Africa. But still, as you have been saying, we have this kind of trend actually starting with Sahelian countries, first Mali, Burkina Faso, Guinea, Niger, and then actually Gabon. And we have to link all this is happening in Sahel or in Central Africa actually to the specific historical context, political context, and social context of each of the countries. And if we just recall the context I've been talking about, so the situations are very different. But it's most of the time about governance, about the way each of the states is able or not proposing to their populations security, good governance, inclusive and open political systems that would allow participation or allow alternation at the head of the state, possibility then for president being replaced. The way constitution is also used by different head of states to keep staying in seat instead of allowing alternation to happen, etc. So it's all about mainly governance, the way each of or the way leadership in each of those countries is producing, a society that is open, that's advancing or blocking any opportunities for mainly youth and any opportunity for political alternation, making then this kind of unconstitutional change actually a kind of trend. So this is what I could say about.
Dr. Hoinathy, the Bongo family have ruled Gabon for quite some time. Of course, Ali Bongo was declared the winner of this weekend's elections. But some citizens, I mean, when you listen to them, and obviously when you listen to the military that took power, a lot of the argument is the time has to come for them to end the rule. But in a democracy, one would see this as being a change or a transition into a more non-military style. Is there a concern that, when one side you've got families or leaders who are ruling in quite a long time, and on the other side, the counter to that has to be the taking over of a military?
Yeah, I mean, it's a real dilemma, actually, even for the international communities and Gabon's partners. But as you said, on the one hand, we have a situation where the same family are being ruling over a country for almost half a century. And then you could see that when this happened in Gabon, you could see the jubilation of people on the streets. And what does this mean? It means that people actually are eager for change. They are very ready for change, whatever the kind of change that is happening. Although it's an unconstitutional change of regime, it's something that is going against the constitution and the rule of arts in that matter. Actually, people are jubilating because they feel that time has come, for the regime to change and allowing other Gabonese to rule the country. It should have been through elections, as these have been organized. But as I said, there is this kind of governance that in some countries is blocking any way to political alternation and peaceful alternation, being it through elections or whatever means. So this is why when this could happen, actually, people just grade it as, the change that they have been always waiting for that actually is happening.
Dr. Hoinathy, Gabon would fall under ECOWAS, even though it's central or western. But ECOWAS would keep quite a keen eye on what's happening. But then on the other eye of ECOWAS, they're looking at what's happening in Niger, and then you've got junta governments that are in Burkina Faso and Mali. So ECOWAS is really in a very difficult position right now if they are to get involved with regards to trying to say, okay, there was a democratically elected president, even though his family has been ruling for quite some time, we now have to make a decision with regards to what do we do with Gabon. So ECOWAS is in a bit of a tight space, aren't they, if they are to get involved in this?
Yeah, it's not just about ECOWAS. It's about all those continental organizations, or regional organizations. In the very case of Gabon, it's rather a Central African Economic Community State. So the ECAS that is in charge and have the responsibility on Gabon. But the positioning of ECAS is actually very complicated, as the headquarters of ECAS is actually in Libreville, the capital city of Gabon. So, be it ECOWAS or be it ECAS or the African Union, all those countries actually, they have a very difficult situation in terms of which pathway they should follow in front of each of the coups that are actually happening in Africa. As I say, the situations are very different. The context that produce each of the coup d'etat are very different. But still, in nature, it remains an unconstitutional change of power, meaning calling upon the same principles that have been accepted on by regional institutions like ECAS, ECOWAS, or the African Union. So actually, it's a real dilemma for those institutions. What might be the best pathway in front of each of the coups that are happening? Actually, this is actually the big dilemma for all those institutions. What they are doing actually is about first condemning what is happening. But beyond condemning them, in the coming days, we will see what will be the concrete pathways that they will propose in front of Gabon as a state.
Dr. Hoinathy, the African Union, now, obviously, as a continental body, they need to practice diplomacy, but also at the same time, they need to be protecting the rights of the citizens of each of the country within the African Union. We've seen, of course, in Niger, where they've taken a little bit of a lukewarm response and have given ECOWAS the responsibility of deciding what they should do within that regional bloc. The African Union right now, what do they need to do? Because it just seems as if they again have to deal with another coup d'etat that has happened in Africa.
Yeah, exactly. Following the subsidiarity principle, exactly, African Union has first to rely on regional organizations, first advancing in terms of decision on the different cases. And also, again, based on the subsidiarity mechanisms, the rules that are actually applied within the different regional mechanisms or economic commissions are in line with African Union's rules in terms of reaction to unconstitutional changes. Meaning that actually, regarding Gabon, ECAS should have to go first. And then the African Union will come in support to ECAS in terms of finding a way out of the crisis. But again, what we are observing since all those coups d'etats are happening in Africa, to mean in places like Chad, in places like Mali, Niger, Gabon today, Burkina Faso some times ago, we are showing a real difficulty and a real challenge, to all those organizations applying this subsidiarity principle and talking the same language when coming to each of the crises. And these discrepancies in applying the rules at the continental level or the regional level is actually, lowering the credibility of African Union as a continental organization, but also of ECAS or ECOWAS as a regional organization. So there was a need for those organizations to try as much as possible, speaking the same language and sticking to their principles regarding unconstitutional change of regimes in African countries. So to have, a way of doing in each of those kind of situations.
Dr. Hoinathy, one final question. There will be a foreign interest that will be observing what is happening right now. As Africans, we would like to solve our own issues, but there's always going to be the foreigners, especially the former colonial power France, who's again expressed concern about what's happening. The United States of America has expressed concern. I mean, surely as African leaders, you really don't want there to be foreign interest or foreign interference in trying to solve African problems.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, today we are in a global world, and then for international actors reacting to what's happening actually, for me, is not a big problem. It's about the leadership in looking for solutions when those kind of situations are happening. And then this is why I've been insisting on the leadership first of organizations that are directly in the regions that the crises are happening, and then the African Union. And it's depending on their ability then to show this kind of leadership strongly and efficiently that then will set the agenda for any other global or international actors stepping in our problems in Africa. But first, I think it's on regional organizations and African Union taking the leadership strongly.
Dr. Hoinathy, we'd like to thank you so much for joining us here on Hilaal Live.
You're welcome.
That's Dr. Remadji Hoinathy. He's a senior researcher for the Institute for Security Studies. After the break, I'll have your latest in news. Do stay tuned to Hilaal Live.